Soul friends, welcome back to SoulNet for part 2 of our conversation with Bill Tierney. Bill is an internal family systems specialist, and in part 1 of our conversation with him, he shared his own personal journey with addiction and his healing and recovery. We talked about what it is that we're actually recovering from. We touch on trauma and our parts, our internal landscape, and just what that looks like and how we can help ourselves. So I hope you may listen to part 1 if you haven't already, and it will really lead you into this next part. So we're happy to have you. Let's dive in.
I just wanted to also celebrate. You are our very first male guest on the pod.
Oh, well, what an honor.
Whoop, whoop. So we are so excited to have some, a divine masculine expression here to model that, men are equally doing the work that we're doing here. It's not a, male or female of this. It's like we all need to do the work.
I've got an authentic man group going right now. I have 2 men in it. There's room for 6 more. And we use the IFS model to learn how to get real, how to become authentic men.
When listening to some of your podcasts, I have a grown son, 27, and I loved some of your conversations around the importance of, positive male models for raising our sons. As much as we think we can be everything to our kids, as women, we can do it all, but we're maybe not offering our kids up all of the skills that they need. And that goes for a man raising, a daughter as well. And I heard that episode and I was really like, oh, but also really grateful for the information, because it's something I've noticed in raising my son as well, that, it's hard. We have to meet ourselves as parents too. Like, we can't do everything, but I love that you're having these groups that are addressing these hard conversations. I think a lot of women go, we can do everything, but can we?
No.
And should we?
Yeah, should we?
I think kids need both parents, and for many different reasons, they don't have both parents. And so, I had to step up and do the best that I could to raise my kids for 2-3 years on my own. But the majority of single parenting situations are women raising their children.
Yeah.
Women raising boys and girls, and women that are raising boys, they're absolutely doing a wonderful, amazing, heroic job of raising their kids. But the boys are not getting modeling from men. The modeling that I got started when I was 17 years old, and that's when I learned how to drink. I got it at the grocery store where I was working, and there were 4 guys that were anywhere from 3 to 8 years older than I was, and they welcomed me and offered me my first beer. And I thought, I belong, I'm part of. And these guys were horrible men. And that's who I began to model myself after. And that's unfortunate that we don't have very many models for how to be a man. Whether it's because we're raised in a household where there were 2 parents, but the man was absent in one way or another, like his own alcoholism or workaholism, or he's away for some reason. So I have a client right now who told me that he was raised by his mother, and he was like 30 years old before he realized he wasn't special. His mother's message to him throughout his entire life was, no, you're special. They just don't get you. But now he's in the workforce, and he's in the world, and he realizes, I'm not special. I'm like everybody else. I have to work hard too. I can't just walk into any situation and have everybody recognize how special I am. So we just miss some pieces, right? We don't get all that we need.
That's so funny.
Right.
And just to speak to your point, Bill, like as a single parent as well, fortunately, my sons had male mentors. Thank God for that. Mentorship in the if a parent is not available can equally provide that masculine guidance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's never too late either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to provide that for ourselves by the people that we surround ourselves by, no matter what age we are, as well as by providing as our current adult selves that mentoring to our inner children that need that so badly from us.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. Bill, in your work, I've heard you talk about healing from a clean environment, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this for us.
So a clean environment, Megan, what I mean by that is that let's use the metaphor of, I'm on my bike, I'm 10 years old, By the way, that was when I got my first bike when I was 10 years old. And that's when I taught myself how to ride. And it was a 26-inch Sears bike. So it was built just at the right size so that if I crashed, the first thing that happened is I racked my balls every single fucking time.
Oh my God. We don't know what that feels like, Bill,
No.
but we can certainly sympathize that would be horrible.
And I had sisters, so I knew I had balls because they'd kick them several times. So anyhow, I scraped a lot of skin off my body trying to learn how to ride that bike. And what I remember is that I'd go home and mom would blow on it, maybe wash it off and put in some. Oh, in those days they put something like called methylate on it.
Mm-hmm.
Iodine, it was like torture.
Yeah.
You thought it was bad enough
sting.
to scrape a foot of skin off your body, and then this really painful, stingy stuff she'd put on it that was supposed to clean the wound. Apparently, it did. And over the next week or so, it would begin to scab over. And then after about a month, I'd forget it was ever there. And, I can look at my arm now and see that I've still got scars from that, but it healed. My body's designed to heal without me trying. My job was just to keep it clean. And so I think that the same mechanism is built right in for our mental and emotional wounds. That when we get injured mentally or emotionally, if we can find a way to clean the environment, to cultivate an internal environment that allows healing to occur, it will naturally occur. In the IFS model, our system is made up of parts that know what need to happen if they can get my assistance. If I can bring my conscious attention and positive intention inside, my system will heal itself.
Mm. So in a clean environment, right? That
Yeah.
you can, I love that is in terms of like the recovery piece. You can't bring that conscious awareness when you're numbing yourself.
Right.
In any way, with anything, right? So remembering that mental and emotional healing, just like physical healing, requires a clean environment.
And I'd add to that like an unburdened environment, which is why nature is so like supportive to us finding aspects of higher self energy. It reminds us of who we are because we are nature. Like, Megan, as you do your forest bathing walks, you're helping people refine their authenticity. So that unburdened environment where the beliefs haven't been, compacted in and blocking and hindering that life force energy.
It feels in alignment with all the ancient healing traditions. So I've got training in Ayurveda, which is all about bringing balance back into the mind and body systems. When in balance, we invite in healing. And those are similar to Taoist principles and other modalities out there. And so that's the same thing as what you're saying with IFS. We talk about cultivating the soil a lot, or I use that a lot, cultivating that inner garden and inner soil. And when that soil is right, we will heal ourselves through that microbiome. So it sounds like IFS has a very similar model. And I love that, because I think we all have slightly different ways of viewing the world. But if they're all ending us in the same place, there's many different ways for all of us to heal.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It makes me also think that, like in the IFS model, for this healing to occur, there needs to be the presence of self. And we talked about this with the 1% that's maybe in that reserve tank, but also a trained IFS practitioner or someone that's well practiced in the IFS model can bring their own self energy to someone that doesn't have access to it yet. And it'll help that self energy bloom in the other person.
Yeah, that's right.
I find sometimes I offer my clients the belief in them before they start to believe in themselves. Yes. Yeah. And that can be a really powerful tool to help them start to do the work and go a little deeper.
One of the things about the IFS model and parts is parts can sniff bullshit from 5 miles away. And so if we show up as coaches into a session and we aren't really being authentic with our clients, like many times during a session, I'll find myself getting wrapped up in something like a figuring out part will come in and want to run the coaching session for me. And I'll begin to get tightened inside, and now I'm not really listening to my client the way I would be if the figuring out part wasn't here. And I'll just say to the client, you might be picking up on some strange energy here. I just recognized it myself. I apologize. Give me just a second. I've got a figuring out part that thinks it needs to help. Let me ask it if it can just relax so I can come back to being coaching again. And that authenticity helps the clients relax because their parts smelled bullshit. And I didn't notice it. They already noticed it before I did. And sometimes it was their reaction that told me, what's going on here? Oh, maybe it's me. Oh, yeah, it's me.
I was just going to say nervous systems are contagious. And so parts are contagious too, in the sense of we can activate each other's kind of latent activations that are there in the background, in the subconscious. We can activate each other's subconscious unresolves because of this contagious aspect in a good way, good and bad, and positive and negative. I mean, negative doesn't mean bad. It just means, negative, the yin and yang.
Totally.
And in the same way, with what Dana was pointing towards, the client begins to recognize authenticity in the coach when it's really there, authentically there. Yeah. They can't help but wonder, oh, if this person can be real, maybe I can be too.
Yeah.
Is that what authenticity looks like? I know what it feels like and I like it. I want more of that. How do I get there?
Scary, right?
Yes, when all you've ever known is acting, performing, pretending, and putting up a false identity so nobody ever figures out what we figured out about ourselves, which is that we're worthless.
Yeah.
We have no value. There's something wrong with this. It's too much. Back to that again.
Yep, back to that again.
Bill, this your parts can smell bullshit from a mile away. How does anybody even exist in the world anymore? I feel like I walk into a room and I'm like, oh, he is full of shit. I just feel like I'm having difficulty being just in a room with people now. And yet I could make anybody feel comfortable. And now I'm like, you're making me feel uncomfortable. You're making me feel uncomfortable. Now it's my capital S self is hang on. You were fawning your whole life, making sure everybody else felt okay.
Right.
Right. It's so different when you actually step into your truth.
Yes. That's such a great example. There was a question in the earlier part when we were talking about what I think Eilina asked it. What are some of the things that begin to happen as true self emerges, as we begin to do this work and start to see the truth about beliefs? And it reminds me of something I heard from a mother of middle schooler who has special needs. She's neurodiverse and she has special needs, and the school just really isn't built for it. But they have a program in place where kids with special needs get those special needs accommodated. But all they know how to do is go through the motions and act like they're accommodating. And the truth of the matter is that they're pissed off that they have to do it. They're resentful, and it's clear as a bell that that's what's been happening in this situation. So this woman, this mother, shows up for a meeting with the team. And as she's trying to state a case for her daughter and advocate for her, she's looking around the room, and people are looking at each other. They're looking at their screens, but nobody's looking at her. Their body language is saying, "Are we done yet?" And so she stops and she says, "What's going on here? I don't feel like you guys are listening to me at all." And everybody suddenly they realized, oh, I'd been caught. And now they sit up and, oh yeah, we're here. Yeah, we're paying attention. But it's all an act. And she knew it was all an act. And I just applaud that she had the presence and what I would call courage. From her perspective, it didn't feel like courage. It felt like this is just what happened because she's doing this deep work. That what happened was she saw that there was a misalignment here. What was being presented was an act and a performance. It wasn't real. It wasn't authentic. And she called it out. So Megan, when you talk about how do you be in the world, it's what I do too. I walk into a situation and I look around and I see, is there a possibility for connection and authenticity here? And if not, see ya. I don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question on
Yes.
that, Bill? Because we talk a lot about like we're a little bit younger than you, but we're going through these
A
midlife
little. You're so
transitions.
kind.
So I'm curious if you went through like some of these ability to say, "Hey, just buy. It's not my scene." Did that come forward for you as well during a midlife transition? I know we often use the
Oh
terminology
yeah.
of midlife crisis, but did you notice kind of a further awakening as a man as well during this time?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, and a lot of it was fueled by rage. It really was. Once I started seeing the reality and what was actually happening, then there was some righteous anger and rage and resentment, and so I created disconnection where there never was any in the first place. But I finally just stopped participating in the pretense that we had a connection, and I just made it official and stopped participating.
Yeah.
I've done that with family. I've done that with faux friends. I've done that with employers. But yeah, lots of finding my people.
Did it align with when you started to recover from your beliefs?
I think it even started before that. So I'm about 33 years sober. I'm still going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't feel like I've ever worked the steps completely. And so I'm going to this big book study meeting, where they are going through line by line, and as they're doing that, and they're talking about the first 164 pages of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which was written in 1936, 37, and published in 39. And they are still devoted to living that program word for word from what was written in 1939. And finally, one day I said, guys, we've learned some things since then. Can't we progress a little bit further? Can't we just acknowledge that trauma plays a role in this and that sort of thing? And they said, Bill, if you're not here for the same reason that we are, which is to essentially to study the big book and then make sure that we adhere to it, then you should probably go. And I agreed, but at the same time I said, so what you believe is that the only way to get sober is to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is outlined in 164 pages and really at its core is defined by the steps. Yes? Yes. So one of you needs to take me through the steps to make sure that I've worked them. So one of them offered, 25 years sober man. I was 33 years sober. He takes me through the steps, takes us about 6 months. And at the end of that period, I recognized a couple of things. Number one, I never had worked the steps according to Alcoholics Anonymous, not according to those 164 pages. So now, big mystery, how is it that I stayed sober? Either I wasn't alcoholic in the first place, or it's not the steps that got me sober. And that's what I concluded is yes, but I definitely had an addiction to alcohol. And that addiction to the substance and use of it ended on November 15th, 1982. And yet I still remained messed up and dry for the next 22 years and sober. What I realized was that it was the fellowship, the connection, the community of Alcoholics Anonymous that got me and kept me sober.
Yeah.
And during that time, I sat in meetings and heard people say things that had never occurred to me. And just hearing them. So this is even before I'm aware that it's my beliefs that are running my life for me. I'm hearing people talk about things that I've never even considered before. And as I am, my parts, I don't know I have parts at the time, but now I realize my parts are getting updated. Like, oh, I thought that the reason that was happening in the world was because of this. But this person is saying that it's happening because of that. And that seems more valid. And now I want to go back to IFS makes sense of my life. IFS has always that's parts jobs is to make sense of what's happening in our lives. And whatever they use to make sense of it back then, when they get the update, whether we're consciously, intentionally doing it or not, they change the moment they get the update.
They're like adaptogen specialists, our protective parts. They really help us adapt, and then it alters the energy of life force energy to maintain that, and there's not as much free flow. It's that like burden that we talk about. Burdening is just really altering the course of energy, and then when we unburden, we can kind of return to like the blueprint.
I just want to say, Bill, You reminded me of your 8-year-old self that raised your hand and said, hang on, no. And then you were your 33 sober-year-old self going, hang on, I'm not sure about this. Like, I love that you still raise your hand and like inquire and then do the work.
Nice.
Yeah, I say like that part of you is your authentic self, which is I just want to honor that. That is why you're here with us today. But also I want to say too that when you talk about your community being a part of your sobriety, the going to the meetings and having the sponsor, that was your community that was providing you with a clean environment.
Yes. Thanks for reflecting that back. That's fun to realize the same part of me that raised my hand at 8, raised my hand at 33, and it felt exactly the same way now that you mentioned it, Megan. And the other thing I want to say about what you just said is that that's built right into. We can deny it, we can suppress it, but what's built right in is I believe this is true for all of us, is the desire for what's true.
Yeah,
that's right. That's your curiosity. That's your inquisitive self, right? That's just always kind of like, well, is there another way? Is there another possibility?
Seeker.
Because deep down, there always is, right? And so I agree. There's, that part of you, that's your capital S self.
Mm-hmm. And in IFS, we would say that's a self-led part.
Yeah.
I just want to say one last thing, Bill. This is my last parting comment to you, is in addition to my gratitude for you, but it's also thank you for helping us to get curious about our parts.
For more information on Bill's Authentic Man group, his podcast, or his one-on-one results coaching and group coaching, you can find him as well as free internal family systems resources at billtierneycoaching.com. Please help us connect with you. Follow us, SoulNet, on the various socials on Spotify, Instagram, and Facebook. Pop us an email to share what you'd like for us to talk about. Let us know what's on your heart. We love hearing from you. Our email is soulnetsisters@gmail.com. Thank you, listener community. Big love to you all.